Michael from Canada, you are on the line with JMike and Johnny. How are you doing?
Hi, thank you to both JMike and Johnny. Nice to meet you both.
Yeah, nice to meet you too. What do you want to talk to us about today?
Oh, well, I called in to start with questions, I guess.
Sure. All right, we'll see what questions you got. What do you got?
I have a couple, but let's start with the first one. Do you make the positive assertion that I'm sure that you see it, but I just have to remark I am myself a practicing Christian.
Okay.
So I would like to ask, do you positively believe that I'm irrational in my belief?
No, I do not think you're irrational.
No. What about the?
But I don't. But I also don't know the kind of epistemic factors that gain you to your belief. But I would say just de facto, right? Like I'm not going to say someone's.
So you don't think?
I don't think like a theist or a Christian's just it's going to depend. This is why it's going to really depend on how you define it, right? Because not everybody's going to agree on certain properties of gods or things like that. So it could be the case that you have an irrational belief in some specific God, right?
Yeah, I guess it's a little vague. Your belief is a pretty broad statement. Do you want to be more specific and maybe ask us that question again?
Yeah, I am a practicing Roman Catholic. I believe in the God of classical theism that has all the traditional properties. I don't believe in the vague, undefined God of deism. I don't believe in some sort of a weird view of God being some force or some undefined ultimate. I have a very specific view of classical theism, just like how church fathers understood it and how the Roman Catholic Church has consistently defined it in its councils. So do you think that I'm unjustified in that belief?
I think that the position's unjustified, but that's a different question to whether or not you're irrational.
Yeah.
Okay, so why do you think? Okay, good. So why do you?
You're gonna have to fill in gaps for me. I'm not gonna sit here and play guessing games. You have to specifically explain to me. Let me put it this way. Like the things I care about, right, are things that have explanations that are backed up by evidence, not just like some unnecessary assumptions. From my standpoint, if we're going to look at this, hold on. Let me finish, Michael. Let me finish, please. So when you on the screen caller has a theism versus atheism, that could mean a lot of different things. Like I don't know if you're looking at like the explanatory virtues, but what I wanted to say is that in virtue of you positing some new category, some new ontological thing, I don't find that assumption's made. So I'm going to take Occam's razor, a principle of parsimony, and not add that extra assumption post hoc. So that's going to be my basis just generally why I'm a naturalist and why I think naturalism best explains the world over theism. But I know, but that's what I'm saying. I'm going to not answer what you ask unless you give me specifics about your belief.
Okay, that's fine, but I want to know from you, like, I'm not doing this shtick where I'm trying not to justify my worldview and trying to attack yours. I'm just wanting to get clear because I'm fine with people being lax theists or whatever. I'm not like this guy who chases people after definition. So you can believe whatever you want, but I wanted to know, do you positively believe that what I believe is unwarranted? Is that part of your positive belief?
I'm not convinced that your God exists from the aspects of what I can gather as you as a Catholic, right? But I'm not. It could be the case that you believe in certain things that are logically contradictory, whether it might be triune aspects or things like that, and then that goes down maybe a different route where I'm like, not only is it unjustified, it's logically incoherent.
Okay, so fine. Let's pursue that line. Do you believe that the God of classical theism is logically incoherent?
Tell me what you believe, because I don't care about playing the game about what I think about this. I care about what you believe and whether or not I'm convinced if it exists. That's all I care about.
I'm a classical theist. I believe.
What's the evidence for the position of the God that you have? Because
give us a why. We get your what's. What's your why? Give us a why.
Well, I mean, depending on the route, I believe that motion is evidence for God if I'm in the Aristotelian mood. I believe.
Let me pause you there. And this could bore the audience, but I'm not sure. And I really because this would just be a very boring conversation for anybody, honestly. I don't know how you've determined the falsity of existential inertia for the first part when you're going to go into sustaining causes, which would be a very long conversation about that. But
existential inertia?
yes, if you're going to go into sustaining clauses in these things, what is the actual like inductive evidence you have, not some post hoc a priori assessment of what you think about change or motion?
I didn't mention it. I didn't mention anything about existential inertia.
No, I know you didn't. When you arguing from motion, I'm wondering how you assume the falsity of it, and that's a whole separate thing to go into. But what I want to know is the inductive evidence that you have. Like, what is do you have any empirical evidence beyond just some assertions of what you think motion a priori gets you to God? That part I don't get.
No, yeah, I have deductive reasons to believe in God based on how we observe the natural order.
Okay, let's have it.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Let's have it.
But I mean, I thought the other person said that they would be bored by me having a conversation.
No. I'm gonna say it's to be boring to go down some deductive route if you're not.
Sure. I mean,
let me finish.
Oh, sure.
If you're not going to give me the inductive, like you have to give me the deduction's pointless if you're not going to give me the inductive assessment on how you came to that, right? Like you have to give me some empirical evidence of something for me to go off of. Otherwise, we're just using inference rules. And I might disagree. Like, right, I might agree with the inference rules that you set. I can think it's valid. I have no problem with that. But I care about whether or not the premises that you add or the judgments of facts, whether those are sound, whether those actually comport to reality. So you can give me some deductive assessment. That's fine. I might agree with the form, but I want to know how it is that you've derived the premises. Like, what does the inductive means? How did you get there, and what is it?
Through observation, through empirical observation.
Okay, and what is the empirical evidence you're using that gets you to God?
We're using the empirical evidence of analyzing how composites exist in nature and what would be necessary to sustain them.
How what exists in nature?
How composites exist in nature. To use Plotinus's verbiage.
Are you in reference like of forms or things like that? Because if that's the case, we're just talking about.
I'm not appreciating you jumping and assuming what I'm going.
Okay, you know what, Michael? That's exactly what I was waiting for you to do. So you're getting muted because here's the shtick. I was letting JMike have a nice conversation with you. You're muted. You're not off the line. All right. This is something that some people like to play. Some of these presuppositional argumenters like to come on here and they like to suggest that we're being rude, that we're being discourteous, that we're acting immature, that we're cutting them off, that we're acting like children, that we're being disrespectful. No, we're not going to tolerate it. You get one more chance, okay? You're having a conversation. I'm listening to the conversation. I'm liking the conversation, okay? So if you do that one more time, you're done, Bubba, okay? You're off mute. Please continue.
All right.
Did you talk the entire time?
I would like. No, I wasn't talking the entire time.
Cool. I love it. I love it. Now let's continue our conversation like friends. Go ahead.
So my conversation is, so basically, I just wanted to make the regular prayer. We can't get into details, but I do believe there's many reasons to believe in God. I do believe that the ontological argument works. The one I like to use is the Neoplatonic proof. I mean, if we want to go into the proofs right away, I would rather ask the questions, but whatever JMike would prefer, I guess. I'm not actually seeing who's talking to me right now. Sure.
I guess I'm wondering where it is that you get off the ground, because like at least from my perspective, there's certain arguments you can use, especially things from motion or whether you go to the Kalam or certain cosmological arguments, whatever it might be, where I don't see why the naturalists can't hold your hand down to all of them until you get to a part where you start sneaking in intention or that it must be of some being or all these properties and things like that. But that's why I care, is that we might be in alignment since we share the world. So we're going to have common themes between our assessment of it. But I'm wondering like what the actual empirical evidence is that gets you to this new ontological category, being a god or a supernatural, because that, I don't see, I can't just grant that like some people do. I think that's
fine. That's fine. I see, but I just want to quickly remark, we're not actually really close because we have two different worldviews, right? I mean, on the naturalistic worldview, you have a mechanistic conception of nature. You don't believe in innate teleology. You don't believe in function. And thus you have this incoherent worldview. Now, I would say that I have an Aristotelian point of view where I do believe in teleology being immanent in the world. So that's one difference between us. But more importantly, I don't think that a naturalist could grant the premises of the cosmological arguments as conceived by Plotinus, as conceived by Aristotle, as conceived by Aquinas, because those do get us to something that cannot in principle be material, to something that cannot in principle be corporeal, to something that cannot in principle be anything other than the most perfect thing. So no, I don't think that a naturalist could grant those premises.
On the basis of what? A post hoc assessment that you think that it can only fit this one ontological category that you're trying to prove in the first place?
No, I don't understand what you're talking about. We're not using, see, this is the problem. Aristotelians are mostly empiricists. So I don't know why people call me a philosopher when I'm, yeah.
So then what is it? What is like the actual thing that gets you to the God? I'm not understanding how you're just like, I believe in this or that, but I'm wondering, like, you can cite arguments, right? Like it seemed if that was the case, that it really gets you to the God, that would have been presented in such a way, but it's not. So what is it? What is the thing that gets you to God? Help me out. Make me a theist.
Oh, sure. I mean, I don't know if I could make you a theist, but I could offer good reasons to be one. That's the best I can do.
All right, do that. And Michael, just so you know, I came down hard on you, and I don't back off of that. But I will say this: there's a delay. So if it seems like we're trying to shut you down and all that stuff, sometimes we are. Sometimes it's delay. All right. So go ahead, give us your good reasons. We want to hear it. We really want to hear it.
Okay. I mean, I have so many. I mean, I have upwards of.
What's the best one that you have?
The best one, the absolute best one. You can take 5 seconds, think of your best one, give you some time, and now give that one.
The best. Well, I think all of them are great, but I would like to start with a Neoplatonic proof. So this goes back to the time of Plotinus. Plotinus was a famous philosopher who discovered that I
don't care about him. I just care about the argument.
Are you going to let me finish?
Well, so I don't want to waste time talking about things that don't matter, that aren't relative to the question that I'm asking you.
Yeah, Michael, just get to the point. I get what I get it. Don't act all hurt. Just please go. Okay.
So what Plotinus discovered is that we observe composites in the world, which is that things that we experience in the world are made up of parts. And this is true of pretty much everything. We observe computers, they're made up of parts, and so on and so forth. So what Plotinus noticed is that upon assessment, we understand that in a certain sense, the whole depends on the parts. But more importantly, it depends on those parts being combined. And sufficient reasons to be provided for those parts to be combined. Now, what's interesting is, as Plotinus noticed and as Neoplatonists expanded, is that even if a combination of parts were to be infinite causally, it would still have to have some kind of sufficient reason that presupposes those parts being combined, such as the example of the eternally existing chair, which even if it always existed, it presupposes that there are some conditions to keep those parts together, like the laws of physics and so on and so forth. So this is what in Aristotelian terms we call a hierarchical regress, not a causal regress. So ultimately and hierarchically, one must arrive at something that accounts for all composites that itself is not composed. Because again, remember, we're not talking about a causal line, a hierarchical line. And upon analysis, we can discover that something that's not composed of parts cannot be material, because anything material presupposes at least a potential to be made of parts.
I'm not understanding how you're getting to this kind of, it seems that there's this special pleading going on with the thing you're arguing for, in which it doesn't have, in virtue of the properties that you ascribed for the whole of other things, you're not doing that for this thing. You're actually saying that it doesn't abide by those same things. Would I be correct in that assessment?
No, it wouldn't, because again, the Plotinus called this the one, and this is a famous Neoplatonic concept. So the one itself is not made of parts, and it cannot in principle not exist, because again, remember, on Aristotelian views, hierarchical regress is impossible. A causal regress is possible, such as the universe could be infinite.
What does that mean when you say it's not made of parts, right? Because I've heard people talk about God in that most simplistic form, but what do you actually mean? Because this just, to me, begs the question that you're talking about a property of something not having parts in a case that would be irrespective of physical things, but that just seems to beg the question for the immaterial that you're already trying to prove. So I don't know how you've established that.
But I've told you that in principle, there has to be something in hierarchical nature from which all combination of parts derives. Otherwise, you would have a hierarchical infinite regress, which is in principle impossible in Aristotelian analysis.
So if that's the case, would you be denying, like, is part of that to say that you're going to be denying actual infinities?
No, I've explained to you. We agree. Well, I have other reasons for denying that, but Aristotle.
Well, okay. Well, that's so. First off, I'm trying to do my best to understand you, but it doesn't seem as compelling. Like, if that's your best, that wasn't compelling, and I'm not a theist. I don't know how many people changed their mind either.
I don't understand it.
Well, maybe I don't. I'll try to go back more into that. But when you say, it seems that you've, in virtue of doing that, you've kind of stumbled under foundational roots that you have yourself. You said you do deny infinite, and I'm sorry if that's not relevant to what you're saying. But when you said, when you did make the statement that you do deny that, I just don't know how that works in virtue of Jesus, giving you eternal life, or me burning in hell forever. It seems that if you deny that, then I actually just have some finite time that I'm going to be burning in hell. So it seems like you're going to have to be.
No, that's a non sequitur.
Well, it's a non sequitur, and that wasn't your point there. I'm bringing that up. When you did admit that you deny that, I'm curious how that works foundationally from a standpoint of eternal life and eternal suffering, because that seems to just go completely against that notion.
I'll explain to you. I'll explain to you. This is going off the lines, but I'd be happy to explain to you. When we talk about, at least traditional theists talk about eternal life, or Jesus existing eternally, what we're talking about is atemporal existence. So something that does not exist in time. You can think about, for example, abstract objects, the way they don't exist in time, right? Just to give an example for those people. But actual infinites are not actually atemporal. Actual infinites are temporal events that have no beginning or end. So that's the big difference. Now, getting back to the topic.
Sure.
You asked me how I get to the God of classical theism. And I have, I collect these arguments, by the way, and evidences. But the one that's easiest to present, I guess, is the Neoplatonic proof, which is that things of our experiences are composed of parts. And even if a part existed eternally, it would have to have some sustaining reason. It presupposes the same way that, for example, the chair presupposes the law of gravity, it being in place so that its parts don't go about flying. So we have a hierarchical regress, but hierarchical regress cannot be.
Listen, Michael, I'm sorry, but I understand where you're going, right? My problem that I'm not understanding, I don't know how, like, you can assess this is the case the same way I can assess anything is the case. I can assess some cosmological model is actually the right model that we should be using, right? I can assess that. Those are different in the sense that they derive novel predictions. So I'm wondering, how does what you're saying, does that, to me, I don't know how that amounts more than just I have ideas in my head that seem internally consistent, as opposed to the actual model at which I'm espousing has some novel predictions at which we can see that it reflects the world.
What model?
It goes back to me going, I don't know how post hoc assessing this gets you any further than you were at the beginning. If you have absolutely no explanatory virtue or implications from the model, it just seems that you're just positing something and you're not actually letting it do any work. You're just saying, oh, this is how changes. What physics model, what models in science, what anything empirically backs that up? And what novel predictions do you derive from that? It just seems to be, this is what philosophy is, right? We postulate all these things, but what is it that you actually have in the world today that really matters in determining things, right? How is it that you actually know this empirically?
But just a second. The argument I'm making is not based on physics. It's based on metaphysics. It presupposes fundamental laws of metaphysics.
And we have novel predictions to determine the correct metaphysics?
What do you mean the correct metaphysics? What do you disagree with what I've said?
I would disagree with that you have any actual explanatory virtue from what you're positing. It just seems that you're positing something that you post hoc assess and then declaring that it's doing the work for you, when in reality, the work that needs to be done is the actual work at which it derives future predictions. Not something that, like, I can look at something and say, oh, if that like if the sun comes up tomorrow, then that means Catholicism is true. Nothing post hoc. I'm talking about something in the future that we do not know. It seems that you're just giving me some argument that seems to fit the way that after the fact you've assessed motion or change or
Do you have any
parts or things like that.
Problem with the argument itself rather than the meta? Do you have anything with am I using an invalid form of reference?
I need to know. I would actually need to know. We're going to move on to another caller, but I'm going to answer your question here and say, I would need to know the actual structure of your argument, right? I need to know if it's modus ponens, tollens, whatever, right? If I need to know if it's a valid set of inference rules. But you haven't listed premises, and I would love to chat about this even privately if you'd like. And if I could get your premises, we can go by them one by one, and I can see how you've actually assessed that they're sound, right? That's what's going to matter. And then we can go second step and just explore both of our worldviews and see which one adds less assumptions, which is what I was saying at the beginning.
Michael, I've got an idea. Why don't you submit your complete written argument in an outline form, in some sort of map, or in an outline, or in a written form? Okay, go ahead and submit it to the email address that we gave below, and maybe we can start a conversation there. You might also talk to JMike off the show someplace, and then maybe we can come back and continue this conversation there. Maybe there's some groundwork we can do there. But I think writing this all down so we can all sort of show the circuits and then map it out that way. Maybe that's where the problems are coming up, because we're kind of going around in circles. But I do appreciate you calling. I hope that your feelings weren't hurt because we were disagreeing. But I want you to call back, all right? And call back with more of this. But I do encourage you to continue this with us at a later time. All right? Does that sound good to you, Michael? No. All right. Guess he is not here anymore.
Yeah, I guess the thing I would touch on is just like, there's a bunch of problems, and we don't have a whole show to go over all your premises. I would love to do that privately. I like doing that with friends, people that I don't agree with on positions. But another thing is that, like, you could, it's as soon as I just deny one of your premises, it doesn't seem like we're going to make much headway, right? You're going to have to show me the evidence. I think a really good tactic that's used is actually just looking at the theory you have and comparing that with the theory of your interlocutor, your opposition, and seeing which ones have the best explanatory scope, and in virtue of also it being simplest, right? And if you have that trade-off, and you can compare those, and you see where someone's adding new things, assuming new things that aren't needed, well, then you can shave those things off, right? It just seems very easy.
Mike, it just seems that, and this is my take on it. You're much more of an expert on this than I am. Oh
no, not at all.
Well, no. Yeah, you are. But you're certainly better versed in it. Is that the only thing that his worldview does? Anything his way of thinking is that is superior is that it allows him to carve out an area for the existence of God. It doesn't have any, like, it doesn't make novel predictions. It doesn't explain the world in a way any better than the scientific worldview does, than anything else does. It's just that his allows for a God, and that's maybe the reason why he's attached to it. But I don't want to put words into Michael's mouth.
Sure.
I do appreciate that he called in. I want him to call back again. I want to continue this, and I want you guys to get together. I'm not giving you homework assignments, but I want to see the continuation of this conversation. I think some of the folks in the audience does too.
Something tells me I will speak to him again sometime.
Something tells you. Yeah, the crystal ball tells you.